talking today about river metaphors. And I am on a retreat now, and right behind me there is the Delaware River. I'm just south of the Delaware Water Gap on the New Jersey side. And this was going to be a vacation, a little getaway for me and Dina. And then life happened and intervened, and it turned into a solo retreat for me with Dina at home taking care of whatever's at home, including the dog, etc. And it's a reminder about going with the flow. The talk is river metaphors because the rivers have so many metaphors in our life. There's such a tendency for us to not necessarily attach meaning, but gain understanding by observing or engaging or interacting with a river. And one perfect example is river songs. There are so many river songs. Oh my goodness, I started going over river songs and just there are way too many of them. There's Old Man River, Watching the River Flow. The river is deep, the mountain is high, Ike and Tina Turner. There's lots of them. We were doing our sound check and Sarah said, ooh, Around the River Bend from Pocahontas. Because everybody has river songs. There's lots of river songs. And they all have different perspectives and different meanings and mean something different to each of us. Think of what not even your favorite, a noteworthy river song is to you. And then maybe there's a reason for that. Or maybe there's not. Maybe it's Crimea River or Moon River. Take Me to the River or Proud Mary. Doesn't have to have river in the title, but it can be about that. And we think of the river as the water flowing. And Joni Mitchell did a song about river, and she wants to have a frozen river so she can skate away. So there's a lot of different ways to think about the river, you know. Run, river, run. Let's do that. When Dina, in 1999, really wanted to write songs, and she was convinced that she couldn't write songs because she didn't play an instrument. And somebody said, you know people who play instruments. And she realized that she could write a song. And the first one that she wrote was Take Me to the Holy River. And then she wound up founding the Philadelphia Songwriters Project and got involved in a bunch of projects where songwriters would get together and share the songs they'd written, and she would produce programming. And it was very exciting. It's still a on again, off again sort of a thing. It's introduced us to some wonderful musicians. And one of my favorite events, a few of you actually got to take part in that, was one called Beyond Measure. And the idea was to get a singer-songwriter to give us a song, and then there would be musicians who would arrange it for a choir. And the final product was this beautiful choral concert with hundreds of people in attendance. And the final song had been arranged by our friend John Conahan, and it's called River Run. And it's absolutely spectacular and getting me inspired once again by the power of the river metaphor and what the rivers mean to us. So I'm sitting here in this lovely little Airbnb next to the Delaware River, and the Delaware River is flowing from that side down this way. And well, we'll start with the downstream end. It's like Philadelphia is downstream, and so is Delaware and the bay and the ocean. So we know what's down there, and many of us have paid the toll to get across the Delaware River at the Betsy Ross or Ben Franklin or Walt Whitman or another bridge in that area. And then further north is Trenton and New Hope and other towns. And then we get up to where I am, which is the Delaware Water Gap. And it goes farther and farther up. And it gets smaller. It gets narrower. It's really wide. It's quite grand at Philadelphia. A mile across, maybe even a little more. And here, it's not nearly that big. And my prayer partner, John Hannes, who lives right on the Delaware River on the Pennsylvania side, way up that way, the river's probably only 20 or 30 feet across at that point, and maybe 6 or 10 feet deep, depending on what the rain has been like. And once, just for fun, I traced the Delaware River all the way up and all the way up through New York State, and on the Google map, basically, there is the Delaware River, which is just a little tiny creek at one point, and then there's no listing of what it is. It goes basically behind the parking lot at, I think it's a Tractor Supply, and then there's no more river. So the headwaters of the Delaware River is a Tractor Supply store in upstate New York. And it doesn't matter where it starts, because as it goes, as it grows, as it moves, it becomes a river. It becomes quite irresistible. And the experience of going upriver versus going downriver are very different. There's that row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Going upstream is work. Going downstream is not work. And so understanding where we're engaging in the flow can be really important, because if we are, like we heard in the reading, if we let go and go with the flow, then it's possible that something wonderful is going to happen to us. And if we spend all of our effort and all of our energy struggling, then we don't get the experience that we want. It is possible to change the flow of a river. One of the things that changes the flow of a river is a natural disaster. Sometimes another river flows into it, and then a river that was flowing in one direction starts flowing in the other direction. That's bad. I used to be into scuba diving a lot, and some people I know who were diving in a cave were in basically a spring, which is an underground river that flows up, and something happened. There was an underground cave-in, and it started flowing in the opposite direction. It became a sink, and that was bad. It's really a bad situation when a river unexpectedly changes direction, whether it's above surface or not. It's very rare for a river to spontaneously change direction. It is possible to change the flow of a river. The thing to do, though, is not to push against the water. Pushing against the water doesn't do us any good, because the water is in a flow and it's irresistible. What we get to do is change the riverbed, open up a new channel, and the water that's flowing anyway will flow in a new direction. That's one of my favorite river metaphors, about how we can take the process that is already underway, the flow that's already happening, and invite something new to happen in our lives. And there's always a possibility to be able to do that. I've talked before about the challenge. If we have 100 tons of something, engine blocks, sand, barley, whatever it is, we have 100 tons of something, and we want to move it hundreds and hundreds of miles. We want to move it from Minneapolis to New Orleans. All we have to do is put it on a barge, and the Mississippi River will carry it from Minneapolis to New Orleans. Very little effort is required. If we want to take that same thing and move it from New Orleans to Minneapolis, much bigger deal. Much more logistics and energy and so forth that are involved in that. That's work. And it's not that it's impossible, it's just that the nature of it is different than if we're going gently down the stream. What is your experience with a river as it flows gently in the same direction all the time? You can sit on the river and watch a kayaker show up upstream and come down and disappear downstream. And they're having a different experience of the river than you're having as you're sitting watching them. Or somebody who's in a raft or a tube. There's not a lot of that going on in mid-November here, but it's the same sort of river where that stuff does happen. And there are lots of rivers in our lives. The really clear river metaphor is the river, because it's a river. And it's kind of obvious that it is, and you pay a toll to get across it. And if you've ever been on a trip someplace where you're going from here to there and you encounter a creek or a brook or a river or something that you can't just step stones to get across, it becomes quite a challenge. Now it's a navigation issue, because the river is doing something different than what you had in mind, and you need to understand that the pieces fitting together is now going to be a bigger challenge than just traipsing across the meadow. Time is a river. Time is a river flowing from this moment into the next moment into the next moment. And we can trace ourselves back upstream to all of the moments that have come before, and downstream to all of the moments that are coming next. I've been studying the book Living Untethered by Michael Singer. And he does a whole section about time and how time is unfolding and how everything, I like to tell the story about the Big Bang and Genesis, and he's spent 4 or 5 chapters going into the really arcane detail of exactly how it happens and why everything that happens today is based on things that have happened in the past. So everything is a predicate for everything else. And everything flows moment by moment into the present moment and into the past. And we are always at this present moment and able to engage with it in whatever way we're going to engage it. So we can pay very careful attention and be aware and completely mindful of everything that's going on. Or we can take a nap, or we can ignore it, or we can think that it doesn't apply to us. We don't have to do anything. We just have the opportunity at every moment to engage in the present moment. And our lives are flowing downstream. One of the points that Singer makes in the book, which is just wonderful, is that when we look out from our eyes now into the world around us, we're seeing the world from our perspective. That's us in there looking out. And if you look in the mirror, you see yourself today, the boy or girl or man or woman that you are. And if you remember back to when you were a kid, when you were 6 or 7, and you looked in a mirror, you saw something different in the mirror. You saw a 6 or 7-year-old kid. But that was still you doing the looking. What's changed is the perspective, and that flow of time has happened, and it's still that same awareness, that same consciousness that's looking. So inside of that little girl, as she's looking into the future, as she's looking at what she's inviting, very likely seeing a woman, successful, talented, beautiful, famous, rich, happy, talented, successful. All of those things that we find to be uplifting. Same thing with a little boy. It's looking in the mirror. A 10-year-old boy is looking in the mirror, and he's, seeing the strong man who is capable and talented and skilled and maybe famous and dashing and powerful and whatever successful means there. And still downstream, there's more. A little girl is probably not looking into the future and seeing an old woman with wrinkly skin, or somebody who's going to need polygrip. It's part of the same flow. The same thing for the little boy, not thinking about the age spots, or the wrinkles, or the making noise when standing up from the couch. Maybe not thinking about those same things, but that's what the flow entails. That's what the flow involves. And having the little boy or the little girl say, "Well, not me. I'm not gonna grow old." Well, yeah, they're gonna grow old, or something bad will happen. So there are a lot of different possibilities. We're not looking at inviting something that's going to be unpleasant, but we may not be thinking about the things that are going to be a natural consequence of the life that we're living. Our life is flowing downstream, and we're flowing with it. And we can struggle against it, and it really doesn't help that much. And sometimes it can work counter to our desires. Or we can find a way to float gently down the stream. Because if this river is going to be going from here to the Betsy Ross Bridge, then me arguing with it and fighting it and saying, no, I want to go upstream, that's just going to involve a lot of work and a lot of struggle for me. Now, if I want to get from here up north, then perhaps I don't want to do it on the river. Perhaps I want to find a different way of engaging with that. The river's still flowing. My experience is going to be different than it would be flowing gently down the stream, but I am at choice. I get to make those decisions myself. I get to invite something new into my life. We've talked about perspective a lot lately, about the way that you look at something changes the way that it looks to you. And I had a great perspective experience yesterday. I went for that hike on the Appalachian Trail. So I left from where I am on the New Jersey side of the river, and I went up to the Appalachian Trailhead on the Pennsylvania side of the river. And I started hiking. And it was a beautiful, crisp fall afternoon, about 50 degrees, nice invigorating hike. The scenery is absolutely spectacular. The sunshine was bright. It was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous, with a view of the Delaware Water Gap and the river. And it was wonderful. And if you've ever been to the Delaware Water Gap, that's where Interstate 80 goes across the Delaware River. So it sounded like an interstate. And there was no way of getting away from the sound of the interstate. And if you didn't want to be listening to an interstate, then that was very much not the right place to be. But the idea is that was there. And I knew that the interstate was there before I went on the hike. So I said, am I going to let my perspective be distracted by the sound of trucks and tires and road noise? Or am I going to be able to let that go and focus on the good that I'm looking for? And we're all always free to do that. Whatever gently down the stream means to you, you get to open to that and invite it in and have your river metaphor unfold for you. Are you a moon river? You going to cry me a river? Are you old man river? Or are you going to let that river run? Your river metaphor is at hand. Open to something new and wonderful and let it flow, because you deserve it. So it is.